it comes from here, and from here. When you use this as your engine, then technology helps. When you start to be more about technology than about what you want to say as a musician, then you're in trouble, Then you are starting to disconnect the soul. But when your soul and your heart and your like curiosity guides you, then it will get there, and then just becomes another fresh instrument and tool to create something new and to connect with the audience in another way, My name is Omri Abramov. I'm a saxophone and iwi player, and also silphio, like all kind of in the line of wind instruments and electric wind instrument, and also a producer and composing. Doing music. Originally, I'm from Israel. I was raised in a city called Caesarea, and then in my adult life, in my career, I moved to Tel Aviv. I lived there for several years. And then I moved to Berlin, where I currently live here, playing around Europe, and doing mainly things in jazz, world music, electronic, of course. I play saxophone and iwi and silphio. Saxophones, I play mainly tenor saxophone and soprano saxophone. In terms of favorite instrument, I don't think I have a favorite instrument, because everything is like connected to what a functionality is in a specific situation. I would say like my go-to, because I just was educated on it and playing it for 20 years, always my go-to is like my tenor saxophone. But lately I've been really spending a lot of time also on the soprano saxophone, and on the iwi. I play for 12 years now, the iwi also, and lately I've been added with the silphio. So it's been, I cannot say that I have a favorite, but I can definitely say that they all contribute and enrich my vision of one another, playing the iwi effects and enhances, or like the saxophone playing is also benefits for playing the iwi and vice versa. And So what is an iwi? It's actually initials for like iwi electric, like electric wind instrument. So iwi, you actually spell it EWI, which stands for like electric wind instrument. And that's exactly what it is. I think it's a good name, because like people often ask, like, you play this electric saxophone or what? And I'm like, no, it's not electric saxophone, because like it's an instrument for itself, You have to really dig into it and explore it, and then the possibilities are endless. The same goes for the silphio, for example, which is another wind instrument, electronic wind instrument, It's just it's another type of the same let's say family of instruments, which are dealing with electronic signals that get this like humanizing effect through a sensor that is built in a different technology for both of them, but still there's a sensor that is based on breath. Then this sensor get like MIDI data or audio data, like expression, or you can assign it to different like MIDI parameters, and you can kind of humanize virtual instruments or analog synthesizers, or basically whatever you would like to. So this is generally what it is, and it's an instrument for itself. And to be even frank, every instrument that you connect to using those instruments is kind of instrument for itself. So it feels like you're playing a lot of instrument, because every combination of sounds, every synthesizer you connected to, it creates something for itself. So there's a lot of exploration going on in terms of the possibilities on each sound you connect to, and how it react and how it interact with the iwi, so it's a world.
You just talk about iwi and silphio. Are they instruments or only controllers?
Exactly, yeah.
Can you explain how you use them?
Like both those instruments, they have their own onboard sounds, but I personally also like, exactly, that's right, I like to use those instruments as controllers, because then a whole world is open to me. I can create a full orchestra of SWAM instruments, using like one blow of like, I'm in a live situation. I can play like just one note, and then through the software instruments, for example, one of the things that I have here on my iPad is like the SWAM orchestra. I assigned each instrument to play a different pitch, and through that I just control it. And of course, the sound engine is the SWAM, on the iPad. That's the sound engine. That's what generates the sound, and I control it with this. But through the iwi or the silphio, I give it a characteristic of a wind instrument, or the real characteristic using the breath and the sensitivity of the breath and all that. So then the combination comes out as something very special. My path in music. Okay, wow. So, well, I started actually on the recorder, like a lot of kids when I was 5. Maybe that's a bit early, consider like relatively early. It was just in my school, and it was a special school that I could go in, like also almost kindergarten age. So I went there, and there's something that always clicked for me with this movement, the movement of like of a wind of the wind instrument, like this thing always worked for me. Nice, I like it. I don't know. And then the connection with the recorder evolved into from the soprano recorder to alto recorder to tenor recorder, and then to a flute for a while. Then I remember I had a fantastic teacher in that school. I think I was really, I'm really like lucky to have really good teachers along my path, So, and then I switched school. So I met a great teacher for saxophone there, and I stayed there for a while. I graduated from high school also in Department of Music. And by the end of that, I also was studying in a conservatory in Tel Aviv called the Israeli Conservatory of Music. And I also had an amazing teacher for jazz and jazz education there. And then I graduated from there, like in jazz performance and education, also like jazz arrangements. And I also studied their jazz harmonies on the piano. After that, I went to also like during also like I was in the Air Force Band in my military service, and after that continued playing for many pop productions and also like in jazz festivals in Israel. And during that time, I was also studying some counterpoint and classical composition. And following that, I decided that I want to do more jazz and want to be more in Europe and play around like the great scene of music here and what it has to offer. And I moved here to Berlin, and this is what I've been doing since. I first moved with my old jazz band, jazz fusion band, Nioji. We did a lot of shows, festivals and stuff here, released an album. Then after a while, we kind of not totally separated, but took like a break. But just everyone developed in their own directions, and now I'm producing several bands. One of them is an Iranian-Israeli band called Sista Nagila. That is like we are combining ethnic music and music from origins of Persian origins and Jewish origins, and combine them all together in a kind of jazz approach, with improvisations and interludes in the middle. So that also, I always learn from that stuff, like about ethnic music, how to approach the kind of like trills and glisses and stuff like that. Then of course it comes to the iwi or to the silfio, and I use it a lot. For example, I played it on the clarinet, on the SWAM clarinet. I uploaded a video, playing the SWAM clarinet using on some Iranian timbre groove, also some Iranian trills and glisses and stuff like that, and just like so. Music, that's the beauty about music. It's all the time when you engage with something new, when you collaborate with someone that is different from you, or just with great musicians in general, you evolve and you learn. So there's the formal studies and there's the actual study that is constant, So my relationship with technology actually started when I was around in my early 20s. I think I was like something like 13 years ago. It was it all came through my use of the iwi. Actually, I started my old jazz fusion band Niogi, and that's where I got into all this sound synthesis through iwi playing, getting a bit out of the, let's say, acoustic traditional world or zone that I was in, which is very is very often like occurs in jazz in the jazz scene that I come from. That is, and my jazz education, which comes from, like, it's grounded in bebop and more like traditional post-bop, even modern jazz, but just more traditional acoustic use of instruments. Then even in my classical, more classical composition education, also you deal with that mainly. So it all started when I just actually started doing music of my own in the line of fusion and sound design. And I just went to the store, I got an iwi. I remember about the iwi, something funny. I thought right, I'm playing all that, up-tempo jazz, on my sax. I just go to the store, it will be easy. I'll just pick the iwi and, we'll just start shredding, Couldn't play a note because it's so different, I was really like, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? But still I was brave enough to get one home and sit with it and practice a lot. And through that, I then discovered, I remember the first synth I ever learned how to synthesize was the ES2 that comes with Logic, I remember I just got all right, let's get it started with, I got a MacBook, and I got, a Logic, a version of Logic. I still have it. It was this Logic that came still with the CDs, installed the whole pack of 10 CDs there. After that, I got an Omnisphere from Spectrasonics. I also in a box. I think I even have that here, just in a box there, installed that. So after the S2, I kind of, I went to Omnisphere, Spectrason, and I then explored my sound design there. Also combinations with samples and stuff like that. This is where it started. My connection with technology, how to assign stuff, MIDI, many things that, apply also for today, of course. That's the principles, Then actually there's a great software called Syntorial, which is tutorial for synth. And a friend of mine got it to me for my birthday, I remember. And then I kind of completed that program to learn about sound synthesis. And then and this is how it started. And currently, it's all. I mean, I have friends who work also, in technology in the area of plugin development and stuff, and of course, connection with you guys, and with like and some other companies, in kind of like also with audio, the company which manufactured the Silphio. Each one of these requires me to dive deeper into its own zone, like if and also the combinations. For example, the combinations they can achieve with Silphio and its weight controller with the SWAM instruments, and controlling the parameters that you can assign on the SWAM, the V3 especially, like what you can assign there is amazing, So all of this is a constant search for new ways of expressing myself through technology. Of course, music is the engine, but technology is the tool, and this is a constant journey since then, and I'm trying to get deeper and deeper. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, but
So
that
leads actually. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But,
No, go ahead.
That leads perfectly to a question that I wanted to ask. It actually is just the perfect lead in. And the point of this question is to talk about expressivity and to talk about the difference between it in the acoustic realm and the electronic realm. So, every player has their own musical voice, and they express it through the various aspects of their instrument. So this is especially true for wind players. When you play your tenor, you've got your lip pressure, you've got the exact way you breathe, your vibrato, the way you play the keys, and that's how you develop your own musical voice. So what I'm interested in is your musical voice on technology, and how many things translated over from your acoustic technique, and how many things you had to find entirely new parameters to work with to get expressivity out of the electronics.
That's a great question. There's definitely things that I had to find a way around. For example, vibrato, right? There's a way to do vibrato. And now, like, for example, in the SWAM, there's a great vibrato response, like by parameters and stuff. But and also in the EWI, for example, you can have a vibrato through biting the mouthpiece. And I tried that a bit. I ruined a few mouthpieces because my bite is apparently too strong. And then, but it's not even that actually that made me to. It's more like even a natural response. I started using the pitch bend. The iwi has a pitch bend on the upper side of the thumb, a pitch bend up and pitch bend down on the bottom side of the thumb, So like I use mainly the pitch bend up, and then I do like something like da, and I do it with my thumb, and naturally searching for that feeling with the sax, I found this thing, and it started to be really a part of my playing. So maybe that is, like you said, it's something is pretty, personal to myself. That I found my way to do it. Many iwi players ask me, you actually use the thumb to do the vibrato or this thing? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's a tiny thing, because if you do it too much, it will be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's just like, something very small. But that's the beauty of music, right? You search for this feeling, you suddenly create this thing that maybe if you were just coming from outside and trying to analyze it like a computer, you would be like, no, that's not the way to do it. But then you put a person in that process, trying to reach for something from the heart, it creates something. So that's the first example that I can, come up with. And the other ones are actually, are more, I mean, it's a constant, like, for example, the curve draft in the SWAM instruments, right? Like, I spent a lot of time trying to find, okay, if I just raise it a bit there, the curve of the velocity, how the response of the beginning or the power of blow, affects the note. And the response, I'm moving it tiny bit here, tiny bit there. I'm like, that's a bit better. Here I feel a bit better like that. And then I change some settings maybe on the Iwi or the Silphio, like I change, maybe I should have a bit more blow so I can achieve that point of change there. That feels a bit more natural. It's not necessarily that I look for what resembles the saxophone, because if I play a trumpet sound, or more than that, a synth combined with a trumpet sound, like that's a new thing, I'm just looking for this, how it will have a soul, how it will have a character that you can hear someone behind it breathing, playing it like it's something actual, like in the room, let's say. That's the general approach.
So you spend a lot of time trying to tweak the velocity curve so that you could be expressive in the way you wanted to, so it would respond to you the way you wanted.
Exactly. And for example, I'm praising a lot the SWAM, but of course it's a SWAM. Of course it's an audio modeling interview because it's so great. This is my go-to. I always go to like the fact that you did like a curve graph, like you can control the curve of so many parameters. It's great, It's great because for me, and I know for other professional Iwi and wind instrument players, for sure, because we talk in Zoom forums and in forums in general, like I know that one talks about this, the curve, and everyone has a different way of approaching a curve and what's comfortable. So the fact that you made it possible to assign so many parameters, like, expression, velocity, volume, if you want, even, like, of course, also vibrato, growl, all that you can use so many of them with the curve. It's really useful. Because for me, it's like speaking in a language that I understand, like, all right, that's the curve. I know it already. If I move that a bit here, I can move that a bit here. And it's just like in general, I'm dealing with curves, like trying to reduce the curves here, on my belly, and do more curves in the software, that's my life goal, like.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. Could you tell us your personal and artistic journey with SWAM?
Yeah. Well, sure, of course. Well, the first time was at NAMM 2019, it was, where I first met you guys, like, I think it was Lele, Emanuele that came to me when I was just connecting my Iwi to one of your instruments, like one of your the sound engine. It was the previous generation of SWAM, and I was so blown away because, first of all, before that I was doing some stuff with the Iwi that was more connected to the internal Iwi sounds, and like at NAMM, at that specific NAMM, and I was playing in for example, in a bass pedals company, with using some bass sounds and stuff with the Iwi, but then coming to you and connecting to Iwi as a controller, controlling this amazing sound engine, and I was really intrigued. To be frank, even you guys like kind of changed my approach about like virtual instruments, like what you can do with like how do you say, like modeling synthesis, and what you can do with like emulating an actual instrument. Now, always my approach, even still now, I love taking several of SWAM instruments and combine them together to do new sounds, So these possibilities were hit to me right away. I remember they were like, I was asking, I think it was Lelek, I was asking, can I combine this clarinet sound with the flute sound that you just played. It was like, sure. And then I put two engines and I put it together, and it was so fun to play with. So I was hooked. And then from there, apparently also Lele liked what I did. So, we kept in touch, and I started this then, well, there's one big video. I don't know if Simone, if you remember that I did that one big video called SWAM, where I did this orchestra of wind instruments. And the way that was, it was a whole process, because I just started, I was like, all right, I can play this together, this clarinet and saxophone together. All right, then I came up with this line. Then I added another layer of flute. Then I added another layer of oboe. And then I started orchestrating it. Then I put some basic beat on top of it, And this way, I just I was diving more and more deeply into that thing, And then the second NAMM show, I was already doing some demonstration at your booth, And I was using some Iwi solo set that I used before, 2 years before maybe, It was like a year before I met you, with a synth, using only synth. Now I did it with a lot of SWAM instruments and some synth to support it, Then it started, and I got great responses for that. People told me that it gives something a bit with acoustic to this fully electronic world. It gives something from our world, So I started diving deeper into that, and the connection with SWAM and with you guys and with the SWAM with SWAM engine, and the combinations of instruments, and I use Camelot now to combine them all. It's been going deeper and deeper ever since. And like I said before, I feel like I can go so much deeper. But it's also it's almost like a guilty pleasure. Whenever I have time, I just you can ask my girlfriend, she's like, what are you doing there all the time with with your iPad and stuff? Just I dive deep into it, just, kept playing with the curves, diving into that, trying new sound combinations. And it's an endless journey and super fun.
Omri, could you describe the experience of performing to anyone, even a musician? Tell your feelings.
Well, okay, so if I have to explain to someone who's not a musician, what is to be performing? Performing is, what? Actually, these times of Corona have showed me how much it's been a part of me, I've been on stages since I was playing in school, but I've been on professional stages since the age of 17, and that's actually more than 15 years ago, that I've started, so it's been such a important part of my life. So there's some kind of an energy interchange, and I noticed that in Corona times, for example, when it was missing, I was really missing that energetic exchange between the audience and the performers. It's for me, I feel like there's some energy in the room, and I try to channel it. Of course, we create energy using the music that we play, but also the audience also creates the energy just being there, and giving us their energy, so there's something in the room that you try to create. And the most important thing is that I try to not interfere. I try to not think about things that are not connected to the situation, and you can find it even sometimes even challenging. It's a challenge to learn how you feel with yourself in a live situation. Many people will tell you, that you think about do I play good? Did they play this well? Did this succeed? Was that good? I try as much as I can to be connected to the situation and just transfer some kind of essence to the audience and connect connect with them, share it with them. I often see that like sometimes when people perform, if you perform, I for example, I was never a fan of like being stuck with my hand in the notes, and just like playing for the note, playing for the sheet music, with I like to, as much as I can, to learn the music or to feel it by heart, so I can face the audience, play it for the audience, explain them what's the message of this music, get the response, create something together in the environment. So it's a mutual experience, in a situation. This is why live music is so special. So this is, if I have to try to define that, this is the essence of it for me, this connection, an interchange of exchange of energies and connection.
Cool. But does the technology really help you or not for doing that?
It's a really good question. No, it is because it comes from here, and from here. When you use this as your engine, then technology helps. When you start to be more about technology than about what you want to say as a musician, then you're in trouble, Then you are starting to disconnect the soul. But when your soul and your heart and your like curiosity guides you, then it will get there, and then just becomes another fresh instrument and tool to create something new and to connect with the audience in another way, So, it's often that people are coming to me in a show that I played maybe one or two songs on the iwi and the rest on the sax, and they will come to me and say, wow, in the iwi, it was like really, they don't say like, what was it? Of course they ask that, but like, they also like, wow, the sound was really emotional. And I was like, wow, okay, after playing a lot on the sax, and of course saxophone have that, when you sit in live, you feel that bell of sound, but still, and I'm really happy when that happens, because it means that I achieved what I wanted, to humanize this electronic thing, to kind of use this only as a tool, creating something new with a sound combination, or just like with my way of playing through this pretty fresh territory of electronic wind instruments, and then approaching the audience, giving some kind of a message to them. And that's the whole, for me, that's the essence, when you use your heart and you don't start to be like a gearhead, like in the bad sense of it, just like being mostly about the gear and just obsessed with the gear. And always remember that the goal is the message that you transfer to yourself and to the audience through that, and then I think technology is amazing. You can do amazing, fresh, exciting, new stuff with it.
Can you talk about that for just a second from the point of view of what you feel you can express differently or better on technology, and what you feel you can express differently or better on your sax? I mean, I'm sure there are things that you can express on both of them, but there's probably some things that you can do more easily with the electronics, and some things you can do more easily acoustically.
Yeah, well, for example, all right. So if you talk about, I'll try to answer that, from just like what comes to my mind, because I can always be surprised, like if I decided to play a ballad on for example, on the iwi, combined with lately actually I did, for example, on the Silphio, on one of its factory sounds, but connected with the flute sound of SWAM, and I created this delicate combination, and I decided to do a ballad on that. And before I did that, I was really skeptical about whether I can do it or not, because, for example, you go to play a ballad on the sax, it's that almost asks for it, where you can like express the gelity, the delicate romanticism of the melody, everything, they hear the breath thing, but I was like, all right, so many people have played that ballad on the sax. Let me just take in that performance something else. And I went for that. And when one woman came and said like, wow, that sound you did there with the Silvio and the SWAM, like she didn't know that it was SWAM because it was on the iPad, but they said like always what you did there with the electronic thing, with that electric flute or whatever they decide to call it at the moment, what it is coming for the non-musician people. So, this comes and say like, wow, that was really something. That was, for me, what I was trying, that made my eve, that night, because like I felt, all right, I tried going for something. It happened in the past that it didn't work out as well as I planned, I tried to go for it, but it was like, all right. But comments, like when situations like that happen, it means it encourages me to dig further into that. But if I had to divide, I would say the electronics, the electronic gives me ability to create something that I cannot create on the sax. For example, polyphony, Polyphony is like, the Iwi has the sostenuto button, which leaves a layer, one note that is like latched, and I developed some personal ways of approaching it and playing with it. And for example, I use SWAM for that, and then like below that a layer of synth, and then like you have a layer of synth, and in the interval you have like a clarinet, and it creates super cool stuff. So for example, that would be if you're playing in some energetic situation, or just like or whatever situation, even an up tempo, like you're just like doing that, and then you suddenly like leave, you're like, and then you leave one note and like, da, then below, and that one stays up, so you have such a strong energetic effect to it, and it just creates something new. When I play it at up tempo of the saxophone, you go for volume, energy, this dynamic thing that goes naturally with this. It's also super fun, and it's great, and I love doing that. It just like plays on a different field, kinda. When you go to the electronic one, an electronic field, you open a lot of possibilities. So what I said now is just one of them, right? So you can explore tons of other territories, soundscapes, effects, there's endless kind of possibilities to it. I hope that kind of answer the question.
If it answered it for you, it certainly answers it for us.
I hope it. I mean, again, it's what you asked like right now. It's like the question, right? Because what we're trying to do is to give the technology and the electronic instruments and the software instrument, virtual in general instruments, the human element that keeps it so exciting for years and not dated also, right? Like acoustic instruments they're never getting old, right? Synth, for example, usually the ones that are flashy, by the way, usually the ones that will be super hip right now, in 20 years, they will not be hip at all, right? Because like it's fashion change. But things that are more subtle and grounded and have this soul inside and feels like just more natural, more likely they will survive the test of time, and or you say endure the test of time, right? That's more proper term. And then and you just try to create as much as this response, as much as the more it feels to you that you can just hop between this actual instrument, like a saxophone, to virtual instrument, like that would be, for example, could be synth and flute, could be flute and clarinet, could be just a flute, could be saxophone and flute and tuba and clarinet together. As long as I create this combination in a way that will feel that like I'm in my home, like, you know, it's like my how to say, like my hometown, home field, how to say, like you know, then I think it most likely will achieve its goal to connect, to be fun to play with in any situation. It connects to just one point, like, this is why I said every instrument that you connect, every sound combination that you do is kind of an instrument that you create, right? Because let's say I decide now to connect SWAM flute with SWAM trombone, or you know what? I will give you actually SWAM trombone and SWAM flute. I still didn't manage to get them in a coherent way, but I did manage to do SWAM flugelhorn and SWAM flute, and have a tuba layer in beneath. Then I create this like kind of sound combination that has a lot of timbres inside, right? If I get that even through some kind of a sound processor, you know, could be an effect, could be like I use some kind of a channel strip. I combine the frequencies together, and then I play with the curve of each of the sounds so they match each other. Then you start to create like totally new layered sound, but that is responsive as one unit that you control it with the electric, the wind controller, you know, as much as, the more that I can get that sound, that ball of sound that is connected with all those instruments to respond together and to be one unit with the controller, the more I achieved my goal of reaching something new that is natural and personal and have soul, you know?
I think that it is extremely interesting for wind players if you could summarize your experience with Camelot, especially on iPad.
Okay. Well, sure. I mean, the Camelot, first of all, it became that's what I take, especially with the Silphio, which I take often, you know, lately. I use the Camelot with it. I used it in several situations, from ethnic even to avant-garde, you know. I used the Camelot there to do some stuff with it, and like even my initial connection with Camelot, when I met you the first time in 2019 at NAMM, I noticed the Camelot, but I was so excited by the SWAM instruments, you know, so I didn't dig deep into it. And then actually the second time that I was performing at your booth, and you connected my instruments through Camelot, and then it started to really catch my attention, you know. Like I remember on the second day of performance, I was just like, was looking at it, was like, all right. This is cool. I can do stuff here that is very easy, you know. And shortly after you approached me with, like you said, all right, there's this new version on the iPad, and there's this, and then I started really digging deeply into it, and it's really, really inviting. That would be the word that I would say for it, you know. Like it's really inviting. It's not messy. Everything you have, the most crucial things that, for example, is volume controls, the chain of instruments that are connected. Which layer do you want in that, you know? That's really, really easy to approach in Camelot. And I think that's the first thing that really comes to my mind, because I could create all my sound combinations, you know, and give them different effects and run them through different processing and see it, you know, and even through different controllers, and see the list of controllers that are connected to that, just like so easily, and to see the level of each of those layers and what processor they're running to, if they're running through something. Then I could create those combinations together. And that's really, really, I think that's the thing that still even gets me to I told you to go into even in my spare time and dive deeper into that, and create more sound combinations, more stuff. This is really something, that you did there. It's really inviting to do that there. And it became my go-to for that purpose, which is maybe 60% of my time spending on the computer, is creating those combinations. So it's a lot. My iPad works hard, and Camelot, and your Camelot also works hard, but it's great.
The one thing I will ask is, since you're talking about Camelot, from the point of view of trying to put together something that, again, allows you to be expressive, what are the features that you find are your go-to features, the things that are the most important in being able to put something together that works for you? Is it the curves? You mentioned that before.
Yeah, exactly. So that will have to do with the actual SWAM instruments inside, like SWAM instruments and engines that I run through Camelot, right? So, I would use the SWAM MIDI learn for the different parameters. Then I would use the curve, and then I could also use that in some things, like assigning in the Camelot MIDI. Like, for example, I assigned like a filter opening, but that has been through Camelot, like an effect filter opening, like for if I do that with the Silphio or that, it opens the filter in different ways. So for example, of course I can do like the ambient, more experimental stuff that I do that and it goes like, stuff like that, with some effects, But what I like to do is to assign a bit of filter, even taking the SWAM trumpet, putting a bit of filter, external filter from another like the external effect. And then the filter is almost open. It's not 100% open, but it's almost. And every small one that I do opens it a bit. So it's like I'm trying to emulate this feeling of like what happens when the trumpeter, just doing like that and he moves a bit the lip, right? Then it opens a bit or closes a bit the filter of the lip. So I try to go for that often. That's really, it's interesting. I can tell you, it's like, it's a territory that I've started to explore relatively lately, like to get that aspect of expression to playing. But I feel like there's a lot there because I didn't realize how much expressivity actually happens from the actual movement of the player, like, which is good, it's, I'm not talking about like, dancing with the sax. I'm meaning like just the small gestures that you do when you're excited or you just like, or you move for a higher register, lower register, all these, the aspect of, for example, movement. I think this is something great that they did actually in the Silphio in audio, like they did the movement sensor. When you approach it in a delicate way, just the small gestures are the magic, even in the curves, the small things, in the volume combinations between layers, in the movement. This is where the magic is, this I can spend hours on, just like, okay, that's a bit better, that's a bit less, like stuff like that. So in that sense, the Camelot is super inviting to use and super inviting to explore. And like I said, I've been spending hours on that, so countless hours. So, yeah.
Omri, thank you very, very much for sharing your experience with us and for your time. You have been very kind. I hope to see you soon performing live with our instruments. Ciao.